Hello everybody. Next up we pop over towards the other end of the district line where we'll be hosted by Chelsea. Kick-off on Monday night is at 8 p.m. with Sky on television broadcast duties for the evening. So Chelsea then. Reports this week have suggested that their successful period, which, entirely coincidentally, commenced at exactly the same time that Roman Abramovich bought the club, may have been financed by money that was even more bent than had previously been publicised. The gangster wars that financed Abramovich's billions had already been well documented even before the latest revelations that UK-controlled profits had been illegally booked offshore to avoid an estimated £1 billion of UK tax, which was then added to all the other dubious billions used to bankroll Chelsea over the years. They managed to avoid the points deduction their finances over the past 20 years probably deserved once more. Last year, you may remember, they sold their hotels to themselves. Having run out of the little red monopoly pieces, they repeated the trick this year by selling their own women's team, who seem to be buying success in the Abramovich manner, to themselves again. There is also the matter of the illegal transfer payments that everyone knew they were making but still managed to act surprised at when they came to light after the takeover. Disciplinary decision on those charges is due next month, and by rights it ought to involve the stripping of all the titles won during the Abramovich era. However, that would involve the authorities developing a backbone and a sense of right or wrong. However, they seem to have got by without either for the past 162 years, and I feel we're about to find out with both the Chelsea and Man City decisions to come, nothing will have changed. On the pitch, it's been a bit up and down for them this season. After a good run in the run-up to Christmas, where they won 5 and drew 1, things started to go a bit pear-shaped. They've won but one of the following 7 games, a 3-1 win over Wolves a couple of weeks back. They've drawn away at Everton and Palace and at home with Bournemouth, whilst they lost at home to Fulham and away at Man City and Ipswich. All of this has left them in 6th place at the time of writing, having gained 40 points from the 23 games they've played so far. According to the note that she left me, Daisy was overjoyed to note that they've not signed anyone so far in the current window, adding that she was off to be pampered at the local spa and that my dinner was in the oven. This leaves me having to speak about the current squad. The current custodian of the onion bag, Robert Sanchez, may find his place in doubt following a string of costly errors between the sticks. Further options for them include the Dane Philip Jorgensen or Marcus Bettinelli, neither of which would appear all that inspiring. If Sanchez does regain his place, look out for copious amounts of time wasting. The keeper's got 5 yellows already this season. They will be without winger Mikhailo Mudryk. He's thrown himself wholeheartedly into the traditions of Chelsea by joining Bosnich and Mutu on the list of players failing a drug test, testing positive for something called meldonium, which, apart from being a pointless answer on that tea time quiz show, forget what it's called, is some sort of heart drug apparently with performance-enhancing properties. Mudryk is still at the I have no idea how that got into my system stage of the protestations, it should be said, though at present he's one of no fewer than 8 Ukrainian athletes who have tested positive for the stuff so far. Their top scorer is Cole Palmer, who really ought to have had the name Colton somewhere installed on his birth certificate. His 14 goals this season have all come in the league, so he'll need to be watched. Oh, let's have enough of them, I think. On we move to the wild and wacky world of association football. And yet again, refereeing has taken centre stage. I've said this before, but please can people stop referring to Michael Oliver as the best referee we have? Every week we hear this nonsense, usually just after he's made yet another error that commentators usually say, we can forgive him the odd one here and there, to which I say, why? Oliver's decision to dismiss Lewis Skelly last weekend might have been damned amusing for most of us, but it was nonetheless a damned terrible decision of the sort that basically everybody sees week in, week out. Matters have been clouded by those idiots sending Oliver death threats. Now that's not acceptable, definitely not on. Apart from the sheer stupidity of it, every time someone does that, it really clouds the real issue, which is that proper criticism of referees and the system under which they operate needs to be allowed. Every stupid piece of abuse simply gives PGMOL another layer of protection to hide behind, which is why things are in the rubbish state they are at the moment in the first place. Elsewhere in the wild and wacky world of association football, Sometime Hammers target John Duran has upped sticks and gone to Saudi Arabia to sign for one of their clubs. It matters not which, as most of them are owned by the same person anyway. No doubt Duran has been swayed by the recent report to FIFA that confirmed that all is well with the country's human rights, and any protests you might hear are simply the misguided moanings of widows and orphans, of journalists and political opponents who have accidentally been taken off the street by a 15-man hit squad and shot dead in the nearest consulate. So that's okay then. In the meantime, Duran might well be advised to make sure he's taken the last set of rainbow laces out of his boots when he finally turns up to take part in the high-quality football on show in a country renowned for the developmental opportunities it gives to its young players, it says here. Let's move on to us then. Well, for the first 2 minutes or so, the phrase "here we go again" was the one that leapt to mind last week at Villa. 1-0 down in short order and a Lino's flag away from it being 2. Then something interesting happened. We actually started playing. Well, much has been made of Mings' injury that required a big reshuffle in the Villa defence, much of the comment being of the order that the changes were the catalyst for our changing fortunes. That's rubbish, however. We'd started to outplay them well before that change happened. At the back, Kilman looked a lot happier in a 3, presumably not having to cover Mavropanos, lightening his load as much as the extra man did. Wan-Bissaka had another impressive run-out. Then there was Paquetá, of whom at times we saw both the best and worst of his game. The annoying thing about Digne's elbow to the ribs was that had Paquetá stood firm rather than falling over like a big girl's blouse, the chances of a red card would have increased exponentially. By going to ground, Paquetá gave the officials an easy decision by letting them react to the reaction rather than to the offence itself. Remember, PGMOL officials are creatures of little brain, so give them a way out of having to do the job properly and they'll take it. Moving on to the injury front, and the news is what you might call mixed. Antonio's rehab continues, of course, while Tadebo's mystery calf problem will require another week at least. Fulkrug completes the trio of definitely not availables. There's also a doubt about the aforementioned Paquetá, who pulled up lame in a disconcerting fashion whilst chasing a loose ball at Villa. It had been hoped that Somerville might make the squad, but Mr. Potter indicated that Jimmy's recovery has been slower than expected. This leaves us with the best news of the weekend, that being that Bowen is likely to be fit enough to play some part in the proceedings this weekend. Mavropanos will also be available after suspension, though in all honesty I'd consider letting sleeping dogs lie at the back for this one. So let's move on to the prediction then. You've got no idea how hard it is to predict a result when both teams are so inconsistent. The Predicto-matic thing that Daisy bought me for Christmas simply delivered an error message stating that it was working on something simpler involving mapping the location of every atom in the universe, adding that both me and Heisenberg could go and get knotted. So this one is all down to me, and I think I'm going to go for a draw, though all results are quite equally and logically possible. So £2.50 I was going to send to Mr. Duran to help him with his removal costs will instead then be wagered with Mr. Winston on a 1-1 draw. Enjoy the game.